Bullshit.
Pretend for a moment we've entered a parallel universe free of bullshit and full of bold solutions. That's what the No BS Marketing Show is all about. I'm your host, Dave Mastovich. Our guest today is Lou Castelli of Pittsburgh Public Theater. But first, let's cut the bullshit. What's up with those creepy clowns? In the past few months, creepy clown sightings have been made in at least 10 different states. These clowns have reportedly tried to lure women and children into the woods, chased people with knives and machetes, and screamed at people from cars. As strange as it sounds, this actually happened before in Boston during the 1980s. That led Lauren Coleman, a cryptozoologist, who studies folklore around mythical creatures like the Loch Ness Monster and Bigfoot. He came up with what he called the phantom clown theory about how mass hysteria leads to a bunch of clown sightings and the story just grows and grows and grows. This reminded me of how Halloween traditions changed in the 1960s and 70s when rumors circulated about strangers putting razor blades in apples and candy. And for folks like Lou and I, that meant Halloween events were held at schools and parents warned children not to eat snacks that weren't prepackaged. Well, in 1985, researchers studied every reported Halloween incident since 1958 and found zero instances where strangers caused children harm by tampering with their candy. Amazing, isn't it?
Amazing.
We could have been going all around the neighborhood. How did that candy tampering story spread across the country despite a lack of evidence? Why was it remembered and believed by millions? The story had what Chip and Dan Heath call stickiness. In their classic book, Made to Stick, Why Some Ideas Survive and Others Die, the authors detail the formula for sticky messages. S, for simplicity, strip an idea to its core. U, unexpectedness, capture people's attention. C, concreteness, explain ideas in human terms. C, credibility, make ideas believable. E, emotions, get people to feel something. S, stories, people remember and act on stories. S, 6 principles of stickiness. And in case you didn't get that acronym because I was going so fast, it's success. Simplicity, unexpectedness, concreteness, credibility, emotions, stories. 6 principles of success. The principles make sense, and we have all probably heard similar suggestions before, yet most of our messages aren't remembered, and communication problems impact organizations, teams, and families on a regular basis. Why? It could be because we rarely apply the 6 principles of stickiness. Cut the BS, or in this case, stop clowning around and start making your messages stick. The No BS Show is brought to you by Audible.com. Get a free audiobook download and 30-day free trial at audibletrial.com/nobs. Try a book like The Girl with the Lower Back Tattoo by Amy Schumer. You can download it for free today. Go to audibletrial.com/nobs. Again, that's audibletrial.com/nobs for your free audiobook. Over 180,000 titles to choose from for your iPhone, Android, Kindle, or MP3 player. Our guest today is Lou Castelli, Director of External Affairs for Pittsburgh Public Theater, contemporary theater in the heart of downtown Pittsburgh's cultural district. Lou has the opportunity on a daily basis to tell a great story about Pittsburgh Public Theaters, including their unique 3/4 thrust stage. The audience surrounds the actors on 3 sides, offering intimate, engaging professional theater, and how every season has a series of diverse theatrical productions that encompass classics of the American theater masterworks from the international repertoire, world premieres, contemporary plays, and musicals of exceptional merit.
Well said.
Lou, welcome to the show.
Thank you.
So let's start by having you walk us through your educational background and your career journey before we get into all the Pittsburgh Public Theater stuff.
Terrific. So I wanted to be a big, bad advertising guy. That was my ambition in high school and college. I went to Allegheny College in Meadville, PA. And I went there in the 80s. So
the reason you and I've got the chance to meet each other is we call it 6 degrees of Suzanne, 6 degrees of separation from Suzanne Mayer, a key member of the Mass Solutions team. And she went to school with you.
We went to school together. And actually, I was going to tell Suzanne this when I saw her earlier. She was one of the first people to bring me into the cultural district on a quasi date. I think a friend date, to see Guys and Dolls at Pittsburgh CLO one summer in between a school year at Allegheny. So she's kind of responsible for the monster that I turned out to be.
6 degrees of separation from Suzanne Mayer. We also joked that a colleague of yours at that time at college was Trent Reznor.
Yes.
And he used to play like Barry Manilow tunes.
He was a very upbeat poppy guy until he met Suzanne.
He met Suzanne and she broke up with him.
And sent him down the rabbit hole.
And he then formed 9 Inch Nails.
Exactly.
No, she gets
urban legend.
She gets angry with me because I've now created an urban legend. I mention it on every show. All right, so you started there.
So I started there. I was a communications major. I loved writing. I wanted to be a copywriter. That was my desire. I thought I was clever. And I went with 3 friends upon graduation to LA to become a big bad copywriter.
Ooh.
And I failed miserably. I went to, we moved to Westwood, and we lived right near UCLA, and we were still living our college lives. And I was trying to get a good job as a copywriter, and all my spec work was not highly revered that I presented. And I ended up tail between my legs back in Pittsburgh. And I took an internship in the marketing department at Pittsburgh Symphony Orchestra.
Well, how long were you in Los Angeles?
A full 9 months. So it was a very prolific time for me. I went through all of my money and had to come back home.
So were you did you take a part-time job?
I took a part-time job and, had some mad money, but mostly I was living off of savings. So I ended up spending my graduation money, coming back to Pittsburgh and moving into my parents' basement, as we all do. And I got this internship at Pittsburgh Symphony, and it was in the marketing department. And to me, marketing wasn't a career option or a focus that I had looked upon. It was something that I fell into. And I don't really even think I understood what marketing was until I took this internship. And my job, the specific initiative was to sell subscriptions to college students. That was what I was hired as an intern to do. So I oversaw the marketing of a student subscription campaign. And all I had heard in the interview was that I would be responsible for creating a brochure. And I was off to the races because I could write and I could tell a designer what I wanted it to look like. And I thought I was getting the job of my dreams. And then I found out I was responsible for the sales attached to it. So I had to identify the target markets. I had to find the contacts within the university communities to help me get the word out. I had to come up with an advertising plan and figure out based on budget where I'd get the best return on investment. I had no idea what ROI was, but I was responsible for it. So it was a hit the ground running moment for me. And it was in a nonprofit environment. So what you spent and what you earned was tracked very specifically. And I learned very quickly what it was to be a marketing person for a performing arts organization.
So on that first day of the internship, you had that oh God moment that I joke about.
I didn't have the oh God. I would say it maybe took me a week.
Okay.
And I realized, wait, I'm going to be tracked. Someone's going to say, how did you do? And so I think the idea of the clever and creative part of copywriting kind of took a back seat. And I learned really quickly, and this is something that's still prevalent to me in my current position, that when you're doing marketing for a nonprofit performing arts organization, you have to know a lot about a lot of different things. You become a generalist and not a specialist. You have to know about creative. You have to know about media buying. You have to know about research. You have to know about customer service. You have to know about pricing. You have to know about all different kinds of strategies that are specific to a marketing approach, but you don't know a lot about one thing. You have to figure out how to know a little bit about each of those things and use it to your advantage. Mm-hmm. So from there, I spent 10 years at the Pittsburgh Symphony in different capacities in marketing.
So at the end of the internship, they offered you a full-time job?
They did, which I think, and I don't know if this is still the case, but I know for people who wanted to break into that world in nonprofit performing arts, the internship was key. Show them what you can do, show up for work, stay late, take on the menial tasks, be willing to schlep. I was a schlepper, a very good one. And you become indispensable in your own way. So I believe my first title was promotions assistant. And I think I was able to get a car and still live in my parents' basement. It took me a couple more years to make enough money to get my own apartment and strike out on my own. But it worked out well for me. And I found that the kind of merging of the performing arts world and the marketing world fit me very well. It allowed me to be creative. The work was never mundane. I felt stimulated by the environment where there are other creative artists, whether at that time it was musicians, now it's actors and designers and people like that, that keep you energized in that world. It's not like a marketing job in a corporate environment. And the trade-off is your compensation isn't the same, but I think some of the fringe benefits and some of the day-to-day excitement is different. So it continued to fuel me and inspire me. I met lots of interesting people. I learned from some very good people who had come from corporate environments and moved into nonprofit. So I think it was a nice launching pad for me. What I didn't get at the symphony and what I was hoping to get was a bigger picture of being a director of a department. And about 10 years into my career, I was courted by the Pittsburgh Public Theater because at the time the public was on the north side and had been there for 25 years and was going to be moving into the O'Reilly, the newly built O'Reilly Theater in the middle of the cultural district. And they needed a marketing director to move them from one space to the next. And it felt like a once in a lifetime opportunity. I was approached about it. I had never really been approached for a position, and it felt like kismet for me. And it really was a perfect fit. So I spent a year, my first year at the Public was 1998. So I've been there 18 years. But I spent my first year working on the north side in the transition stage from getting the Public from its old home to its new home. And it was a completely different vibe and a completely different atmosphere. It was much more casual. And I would say the symphony at the time, and probably still, is the most corporate of the performing arts organizations. It's got the largest budget. It's got the most diverse and I would say traditional programming. So the support base and the board, I think, is a bit more traditional. So the entire feeling and atmosphere in the organization, probably similar to what the Carnegie Museums would be like, kind of the two kings of the hill nonprofits in the city of Pittsburgh. It felt very corporate, but it wasn't. But when I moved to the Public Theater, it was like, wear jeans to work, and what time are you going to get here? Well, as long as you get the work done, you might have to stay till 10 tonight, but don't worry about that. If you come in the next morning at 11 and you stay till 9, we're good. It all became a little bit more casual and less structured for me. And then we moved downtown and it became more structured again. So I don't know if it's because as soon as you get downtown, it becomes more corporate. Who knows? But on the north side, it was very loose and a lot of fun.
Talk about that cultural change, because I think that's one of the things we talk about. This shows a lot about leadership and communication, and both of those impact culture. So you go from one place which seemed a little bit more corporate, a little bit more structured, and then you get 1 year where you're much less structured, a little bit more laid back, and then you go back sort of close to that. So that's really 3 different cultures in the span of really 13 months, 14 months. Talk about how that was as an adjustment.
The interesting thing for me was, I showed up my first day at the Public on the north side, all suited up and ready to go. And I walked into a culture that was, in a very positive way, relaxed. And I wasn't used to that. And I think that I like a little bit of structure. So that structure coming back in for me helped tremendously. I remember very specifically my first year at the Public, there was a guest director coming in. And I was warned by everyone, he's very specific. He likes things a certain way. He has a very high standard. It's going to drive you crazy working for him. And I was a little daunted. And I met this guy. He was directing a play called Who's Afraid of Virginia Woolf. It was one of the last plays we were doing in the old space. And his name was Ted Pappas, who is my current boss. He ended up becoming the producing artistic director of the Public Theater when his predecessor, Eddie Gilbert, left. And Ted Pappas was exactly the kind of person I was used to working for when I worked at the Symphony. And so all the people who said to me, you're going to be thrown by working with this guy, get ready. I felt like I was home again because there was a standard, and that standard was very high. And I felt I performed better working side by side with a person like that. And Ted became the big boss. He became he actually became the artistic director first. We had a very specific management structure at the time that was managing director who handled business and artistic director who led the company with all artistic endeavors with a shared leadership. And eventually when Stephen Klein, who was the managing director at the time, moved on to a position in Louisville, they restructured the organization. And I had been at the Public for a good 5 years, I'd say, at that point. And Ted became the producing artistic director, which merged the business side and the art side together. And then he assembled a senior management team. And I happened to be the person who, from the marketing side, became a part of that team. And I moved on from marketing director to director of external affairs at that time. So I've been in my position for a good 8 years, maybe 10 years as director of external affairs.
So you came to that first day on the job suited up.
Oh, yeah.
How long did you continue to suit up?
For a week. I'd say a week. And I still, to this day, suit up for the right moments, obviously. Meetings with potential sponsors, meetings with trustees, meetings where I feel the Public Theater should be represented at a very high level. And I like to wear a suit every now and again too. But I think it took me a week to kind of get rid of the jacket, and eventually I got rid of the tie. Yeah.
It's a tough process. When I suited up for at least 13, 14 years, and I started Mass Solutions, and we were here in downtown, but not in the offices we're in now. We were almost like a business incubator. We had Lloyd Corder, Dr. Lloyd Corder had his market research firm. Linda Dickerson had her nonprofit strategy firm, and we had Mass Solutions, and we were sharing space. And both of them had been people that I brought in as vendors in my chief marketing officer positions at various places. So I come in with the suit and tie, jacket, tie and everything, first day on the job, second day on the job. So like at the end of like the first week, it's like you said, it's a process. I was willing to take the jacket off.
Yep.
Then after about 3 weeks, Linda and Lloyd say, hey, we got to talk to you about something. I go, what? I was like all nervous. And they go, you need to stop wearing a tie, dude.
I will say, I do think to this day, if someone in my capacity walks into the room suited up, I take them seriously. There is something about that drag, that uniform that someone wears that does does command attention and respect. And I also think you look polished. So yes. I like that option still exists for me. You know, I know if I put on that look, it's going to get me a different kind of response. I also know that when I'm dressed as I am today, that I can get the job done. I know that there are certain people, if this particular trustee of the Public Theater walked in and saw me in a button-down shirt and jeans, I don't think they would take me as seriously because they're used to seeing me in committee meetings and board meetings in the same kind of look that they have. And I do think perception is everything, as we know in this world, see that and sometimes take you more seriously. But that being said, I wouldn't trade my summer gear for the world. And I love coming to work as I want to come to work sometimes.
I agree. And I think the key message that you said that I think not enough people listen to is you have to adjust based on what your
Absolutely.
target market is. So when I try to talk to people who have never suited up or never gone in that full business, and they hear the term business casual at a big company. We have clients that are multi-billion-dollar companies. They'll say, well, it's business casual on Friday or whatever. And that's a different definition for everybody. And the most important thing to remember, though, is play to your target audience.
Totally.
I had someone come in for the second day of their internship, and they came in sandals and shorts. And I'm kind of like, I'm not mad, but that's kind of dumb.
Right. Well, I had a colleague, a good friend of mine, Mark Power, who was a managing director in between when Stephen Klein had left. And he called people out on their casual work choices in such a casual way himself. Someone would wear, say, a T-shirt, but it was really an undershirt. And you know the difference between a T-shirt and an undershirt. And Mark would say, hey, Rob, why are you wearing an undershirt to work? And he's like, it's a T-shirt. He's like, no, a T-shirt is not what you wear under a shirt. He's like, did you get that 3 in a pack? He's like, that's an undershirt. It is not a T-shirt. So to me, like I learned from watching that, because there are people to this day, I've had colleagues, people who have worked for me, who take casual one step too far.
Yes.
If the trend is holes in your jeans, it's not a trend at the Public Theater. You have to have jeans that are fully covering your knees.
Right.
So could you get a full pair?
Exactly.
That's where I start to feel like my dad. So it's that's where you see that influence rub off.
Absolutely. Well, I'm gonna go down that path a little bit. Although I your dad was probably a mentor, but I want to make sure I have you talk beyond family members, because this show again is about leadership and communication, and I want to kind of hear who are your mentors and how they impacted you.
So I was very fortunate that the Pittsburgh Symphony to work with a variety of marketing professionals that kind of led me down a very appropriate path. I think I learned quickly, but the person that pops out to me as a mentor there is a surprising one, but not. It's Marvin Hamlisch, who's the composer, and he's now deceased, composer and conductor. He was brought in 5 years into my time at the symphony as the principal Pops conductor. He was brought in to kind of re-energize the Pops series, because the Pop series at the symphony is the lighter version of classical music, and often shares the program with headliners who are often artists that are in the second phase of their career. It could be from our day, people like our parents listened to, like the Letterman or Stephen Eady, people like that, who were looking for the next phase of their careers. And they would tour with orchestras and do these Pops concerts where they would sing their hits that had been orchestrated for a symphony to play. And what Marvin was brought in to do was to re-energize that programming so that it wasn't your parents' version of Pops. It was to be bringing in potentially a new audience and to energize that series. And, this is a guy who wrote a chorus line. He's a big Broadway legend and has earned his stripes working with everyone from Barbra Streisand to whatever other popular star was out at the time in New York. So it was a little unnerving for me to work with him. I didn't know what to make of it. He, like I was saying about Ted, had a very high standard, but it was also a very commercial way of looking at marketing the arts. I worked for the Pittsburgh Symphony where it was very sophisticated and very subtle sometimes the way we marketed. It was just making sure people knew what the program was, not necessarily beating them over the head with it. And when Marvin Hamlisch came in, he was like, the title's not big enough. Make the title bigger. And I was like, okay, I'll make the title bigger. Like, just very basic Broadway style marketing. Where's the name of the show? I don't see the show. I have a very specific memory of being at my desk and getting a phone call on a Thursday afternoon when the orchestra was in rehearsal on stage at Heinz Hall. And they're like, Marvin wants to see you. And I was like, but Marvin's in rehearsals. Why does he want to see me? I walked down to the stage. He was literally with the stick conducting the orchestra, called me onto the stage. while he was leading them and says to me, "Why wasn't there an ad in the paper today?" I was like, "What do you mean?" I was like, "This isn't a day we run print ads. This isn't the day that the Weekend magazine runs. Why would we have an ad in?" So it was just his mindset to always have his mind on marketing as well as, and selling really, as well as making sure the art was of a very high quality. And he taught me how to be more proactive and aggressive with the message. And I think that I worked so hard to be sophisticated in my early years because that was kind of the brand. And I learned to be more forward. And I think he was a great mentor for that reason. And I'd say my other mentor, and he continues to be my mentor, is Ted Pappas from Public Theater. Same kind of energy, someone who cares very passionately about the product. And the product is art. He wants more people to see it and experience it. It's not just art for the sake of art. He wants it to make people happy or make people think or drive people to make different kinds of decisions. And the only way to get people to do that is if they buy a ticket. And you can't kind of hide your quality under a rock. You have to tell people you're good. You have to show people you're good. You have to let them know what you're doing. And I think that there's that. The difference with Ted versus Marvin, there's that desire for people to know, but there's also a desire to always take the high road and do it in a upstanding way, not to be opportunistic at the sake of losing the quality of the organization. And not that Marvin did that, but I think that's what I've learned from Ted. It's when you have a chance to do something and you could do it in a way that might not be the most scrupulous, don't do it that way. Do it the most above board, high quality, high road way. And that's what I think Ted has taught me as a mentor.
That's Lou Castelli, Director of External Affairs for the Pittsburgh Public Theater. And I'm Dave Mastovich. You're listening to the No BS Marketing Show.
The No BS Marketing Podcast with Dave Mastovich is brought to you by Mass Solutions. Put our 3-step No BS process to work for you. Visit masssolutions.biz today to take your marketing to another level. It's all about bold solutions, no BS.
Lou, talk about a learning experience when maybe you were a BS employee, a tough boss, or your communication was not what it needed to be. Looking back, when do you think you might have been guilty of some BS, and what'd you learn from it?
So this is an interesting question for me because I think I'm a BS employee and a BS manager a lot because of my Catholic guilt. I think I hold myself to a high standard and maybe overanalyze some choices. But one thing that popped out to me in thinking about this was we did an event at the theater for a few years. It was called the Preview Party at the Public. And the purpose of the event was to get fans and enthusiasts, patrons of the arts, into the venue to hear Ted talk about the upcoming season. And of course, we would also try and get those people, that captive audience, to buy subscriptions while they were there. These events have been very, very successful for us. And the reason is Ted is our secret sauce. He loves to talk about things. And when he does, he converts people. They want to buy. It's like, here's my money, take it. And we love that. It's a great feeling. The second year we did the party, we had a new box office manager. And I will remind you that the party is called Preview Party at the Public. And you are issued a ticket for that party. And the day of the party, when 450 guests were about to come in, I found out from an ex-colleague that our ticket said Preview Party at the Pubic. And it was bad. It was the kind of thing that, as a marketing director, I was humiliated by. It misrepresented the company. It would play on all of the fears and anxieties of any leader that's how you're being represented in the community. And you knew your trustees would see that, your potential audience would see that, and your colleagues in the cultural district. to me, it was one of the most embarrassing experiences. But what I learned from it was I can be a very defensive BS person. So instead of just taking the responsibility for it, I wanted to cast blame. So to me, it became the new box office manager's fault. But if I really was being a good manager, I would have proofread that ticket. It's such a small thing, but it was distributed, and it's still to this day, 5 years later, something that people joke about. Now it's something funny. It is funny, preview party at the Pubic. And it's funny that it doesn't happen more often because spell check wouldn't pick that up, you know? So it's from the most mundane place, it shows you the importance of proofreading. And I'd say from the more high level place, it teaches you that as a manager, you have to be humble and accountable and just own your mistakes. And that for me is something that if I was at that time, probably trying to take the ownership and put it on someone else. At the end of the day, as a director, the onus is on you. That's what I learned from that.
That's a fantastic example because you did break it down where there's the entry mundane thing of the proofing within the big leadership philosophy as well. Hear more of my interview with Lou Castelli of the Pittsburgh Public Theater on part 2 of